Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Live Show, Week 11 game-by-game preview edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to get those fantasy teams one step and one win closer to hopefully capturing that fantastic prize at the end of the season, or at a minimum, just avoiding the loser's punishment. That's really what we're all trying to do at the end of the day. So again, guys, as we always do here on Wednesday, going through game-by-game, giving you one objectively cool fact about each and every team that we go through. And by we, I mean myself and the one, the only, Kendall Valenzuela. K-Dog's in the house. What's up, Kendall?
What's up, Ian? How's it going? We get fun Jameis Winston news we get to talk about. We get to talk about, all the other breakdowns that we have for week 11, 4 weeks until the fantasy playoffs. We gotta get going. I'm good.
Absolutely. Famous Jameis QB1. The world is looking good again. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. It's time for our DraftKings opening lines. Jackson Dart's still obviously the starting QB in New York, but he is also still in the concussion protocol, and it will not be the artist formerly known as Dangerous taking over. As K-Dog told us, it will be Jameis Winston under center. Already quoting Hamilton, a play I have not seen, but heard it actually is pretty good. Kendall, Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe Darius Slayton, he's got a hamstring. I feel better about them with Jameis under center. I don't know if he's going to help the Giants win football games, but it's going to be more entertaining.
No, he's not. They're not going to win, and he's going to make mistakes, but that's okay because we're not starting Jameis Winston in fantasy football. We just want Jameis Winston to have the YOLO downfield balls, and we just say, perfect, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, except I have Darius Slayton on my teams, Ian, and so seeing him pop up with that hamstring injury is a little bit concerning, but you're way more excited about him than Russell Wilson. And you know me, I do like Russell Wilson. I did as a Seattle Seahawks fan. You can tell I'm a Mariners fan, but we want Jameis Winston out there instead.
NFL high 9.5 yard average target depth since 2020. That is almost an entire yard more than the next closest quarterback. So YOLO ball, DGAF, whatever you want to call it, Jameis, he is a very fun gunslinger. We will see what happens out there. Otherwise, in the quarterback streets, Lamar Jackson not practicing on Wednesday. That said, guys, I would not be too concerned. It is a knee injury, but Harbaugh already told us he should be okay and is expected to return on Thursday. Also know CJ Stroud not practicing with that concussion. It does seem like Davis Mills could once again draw a start for the Texans. And then we have Brock Purdy limited with the toe injury. That said, the plan is for him to start this week per Kyle Shanahan. Shanny was saying that they want 3 aggressive practices in a row from Purdy, hopefully getting 1 under his belt here on Wednesday. Moving on to some running backs, we have Ramondre Stevenson out for Thursday Night Football. Terrell Jennings is questionable. Maybe, just maybe, could be the complete Travion Henderson show. He should be started again either way, though, just with Mondre out of the picture. Also have Isaiah Pacheco, J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill, all not practicing. We did get one great news returning to practice, though, Kendall. Bucky Irving back. We saw courtesy of a very weird, blurry picture that apparently Greg Allman took from his phone through a pair of binoculars. So thank you, Greg, for getting us that shot. And hopefully Bucky is going to be back in the picture. He was limited, Kendall. Again, we're still trying to figure out this shoulder injury. Apparently is the primary culprit if it can withstand contact. But hey, at least he's back out in the practice field.
Exactly. At least we saw him, even though it was a grainy photo. And my co-host on SiriusXM, Adam Ronis, said that he didn't believe that was him, that they had someone out there looking like him and dressing like him. But we did confirm that it was, in fact, Bucky Irving. It is, like you said, it's nice to see him just out there because the shoulder injury that popped up after the other injury that he had, that was the one that was more concerning. And then he was in the sling. We haven't seen him for a while. So I know Rashad, white managers aren't necessarily happy with this news. I know Sean Tucker, same thing. But it is good to see him out there. I'll just be curious if he goes this week. I'd be pretty surprised if he did play week 11, but getting back out of practice, getting a full week, maybe we see him in week 12.
That's kind of where I'm at. Week 12 seems more likely. Maybe week 11, though. Either way, soon for someone who, again, was just dominating fantasy football prior to suffering those unfortunate injuries. Finally, note that in Madrid, they will be getting to see Chris Rodriguez. I'm sure that's why all those, Spaniards are buying tickets to this one. He will be playing this Sunday despite having that shoulder injury. Over at wide receiver, Devontae Adams not practicing Wednesday due to an oblique injury, but Sean McVay told us that he does expect Adams to be ready to play for that NFC West battle against the Seahawks here on Sunday afternoon. Get your popcorn ready for that one. Unfortunately, we'll not be seeing Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. This weekend. Garrett plays on Thursday. But yeah, no Marv. He actually had to undergo surgery for an appendicitis. Kendall, I don't love Schefter saying that he's out this week and possibly longer. I'm not exactly sure what the recovery timeline is like from an appendicitis, but it doesn't sound good. We also have Zay Jones suffering a torn Achilles. He's out for the season. Michael Wilson, our one true short king, Greg Dortch, or is it just going to be 30 targets for Trey McBride?
I hopefully the latter for my Trey McBride teams. But if you're so desperate, like I know I am in one league, that you have to go and get Michael Wilson, you're hoping that he just gets some targets there, Ian. But yeah, I said this too, I didn't really like how they were reporting about Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think if you have him, you just have to be really cautious and have a different guy just in case, especially this week because we know he's already out. But it sounds like it's going to be more in the 2 to 3 week timeline. So we'll have to watch out for that. I guess, recovery can't be great. So yeah, we just have to watch out for it. But I would expect him to be out for 2 weeks.
I tend to be of the impression, again, just Trey McBride, all ready to tie them one, but now you feel even better about that overall ceiling. Michael Wilson gets in that kind of low-end, borderline wide receiver 3 conversation. George Torch, maybe in that top 55, but yeah, I wouldn't still be going out of my way to necessarily start those guys. Also have Ricky Pearsall and Calvin Ridley returning to practice. I've not heard a peep from either of these guys in so long. Round of applause. Calvin Ridley is, in fact, alive and practicing, so good news there. Also good news for Romeo Doubs. Should be good to go per Matt LaFleur after suffering that chest injury on Monday night. Unfortunately, no Kayshon Boutte for the Patriots. Giants wide receiver, as Kendall mentioned, Darius Slayton, not practicing with a hamstring. He did come back in the game. I'm not sure if that was him having the adrenaline of the injury not setting in yet, but just I wouldn't necessarily assume he's going to be out, but obviously not a good start. Also have Josh Palmer returning to practice. Khalil Shakir is limited. Rashad Bateman not practicing. Chris Godwin limited. Fun note here, Kendall, I guess for most people other than AJ Brown fantasy managers. While on a Twitch stream last night, AJ Brown was quoted as saying, "If you got me on fantasy, get rid of me." Buy low opportunity, Kendall. That was kind of my first thought here, because I don't think this is going to impact anything with the Eagles. And I just think this is going to make people who are rostering AJ Brown just want to trade him for nothing at this point.
I went the same direction, and I said it's a squeaky wheel game this week. There's no way he doesn't pop off for 25 plus fantasy points. There's no way it doesn't happen. So, but could he not have said this weeks ago? Because if we are going to get the true squeaky wheel game, could we not have done this before week 11? Because this has sucked. I think you tweeted, but your rankings, and I think everyone else's, Devontae Smith was ahead in the rankings last week of AJ Brown, and you wrote that out. But it just feels right the rest of the way until we see something different. But I'm really hoping. I need a squeaky wheel AJ Brown game really bad this week.
Again, Sunday Night Football in Philly against the Detroit Lions defense that loves running their man coverage. Could be the perfect ingredients, again, for a nice little squeaky wheel game for A.J. Brown. Finally, Dalton Kincaid not practicing. Sam Laporta popped up as a DMP with a back injury. Keep an eye on that. Oronde Gadsden will practice with that knee injury. Good news there. Doesn't sound like he's necessarily going to be missing any time. No Austin Hooper for Thursday night. Nice little bump for Hunter Henry. And the Jaguars opened up a 21-day practice window for Bretton Strange, so he should be back soon. Finally, Trey Hendrickson remains doubtful, and the Eagles cornerback Jair Alexander is stepping away from football, focusing on his physical and mental health. He has been placed on the reserve/retired list. So with all that in mind, everyone, let's get into the Week 11 matchups. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. But first, a quick word to our friends at DraftKings. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5, get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money lines, spreads, and more, or stay in the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE. Bet just $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 more if your bet wins, paid out in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. Kicking things off with Thursday Night Football, and then we'll be going from the highest game total to the lowest one, giving you a scholar. Listen to us. Thank you, by the way. At least one cool bit of information for each and every team along the way. So with that in mind, K-Dog, let's get started with Thursday Night Football. The Patriots, 13-point home favorites against the Jets. Jets. Game total resting at a lowly 43, though. So looking at those Jets, I would love to think we could trust Justin Fields, guys, but it's been so tough. I was just complaining to Kendall and producer Matt and Kelsey before the show. I don't think any of us expected Fields to average 300 passing yards a game, but 125, 130? No, I guess we got to settle for pretty much 50 anytime he's not facing the Bengals or the Steelers. So I would put the Patriots in as a good defense. I do expect to shut down Fields, and just given the threat of him being benched, honestly, guys, I think Breece Hall is the only one that we can even somewhat feel good about in this matchup, but that's going to be tough. The Patriots have only allowed one running back, that being Sean Tucker, to surpass 50 rushing yards this season. Really, the only way that I think Breece Hall is going to make some big plays in this one would be as a receiver. Obviously saw him with the awesome screen touchdown last week, and that has been the one weak point of this Patriots defense. They've allowed league high marks in terms of targets and receptions allowed to opposing RBs, something obviously Breece Hall is very capable of taking advantage of. So I actually was checking out some of the player props before the show. Breece Hall over 2.5 receptions is actually plus money at 118, and that's just receptions, guys. So I would like to think in 60 minutes that they're going to be designing him a couple screens. Maybe he gets a check down. Again, no guarantees in the Jets passing game. I get it, but Breece Hall is set up well. We've seen Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara, and Tony Pollard all catch at least 5 passes against this group. I do think Breece, hopefully in full PPR, can get going. So my RB19, he's ahead of guys like Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, Kamani Vidal. I would be starting RJ Harvey, Aaron Jones, and Jalen Warren over Breece Hall. With that said, Kendall, looking at the Patriots, I know we did get the word that Ramondre Stevenson is out. So how excited can 2-8 fantasy managers feel about slotting up TreVeyon Henderson this week?
You 2-8 fantasy managers can fire up TreVeyon Henderson and just feel so great about it tomorrow night. And yeah, that is the game tomorrow night. So you do have to remember that one. But yeah, you have to like it at least, Ian. I'm just worried. The only thing I'm worried about is Terrell Jennings, right? He's questionable. I think he's on the right side of the questionable tag as well. So I think we can expect him back this week because he was practicing. But we have to look at the splits with and without Stevenson. And without Ramondre Stevenson in there for TreVeyon Henderson, he's had 79% of the snaps, 60% rush attempts, 71% of the routes, and then a nice 83 utilization score. And then the PPR fantasy points per game come out to 20.4. Now, of course, we have to remember that was a lot from last week. He had 28, 12.7 the week prior. But I think this is exactly what you need because you were not loving the start for TreVeyon Henderson. You were saying to yourself, I cannot start this guy. I've got one of those big leagues, Ian, where I just told myself, I can't keep doing this until an injury happens. And unfortunately, it did to Ramondre Stevenson, but this is the time to take advantage of it. So if you do have him, now is the week to play him because he really does get bumped up in our rankings. And there's no other time to play him because once Ramondre Stevenson comes back, I'm erring on the side of caution, Ian, that it's going to go back to a true split. This team loves Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think that they're going to go away from him anytime soon. So just play him now because you might not be able to get the satisfaction later on in the week or in the year.
Obviously couldn't ask for a better matchup against us. Now, depleted Jets defense, TreVeyon is a top 15 running back in our fantasy life ranks. Moving on to the highest game total of the week is going to be taking place on Monday Night Football. We got the Raiders hosting the Cowboys, who are 3.5 point road favorites. Game total resting at 50.5 points. So looking at the Cowboys, guys, we're starting CeeDee Lamb, obviously, and we're starting George Pickens and Jake Ferguson too, but we might need to actually pump the brakes a little bit on our overall expectations for George Pickens and Jake Ferguson. Look, when you saw the 4 games without CeeDee Lamb this year, it was absolute cinema, everyone. Okay, we had George Pickens averaging 24 PPR points per game, and Ferguson was at 16.6. That said, we now have had 5 games with CeeDee Lamb. We've seen Pickens go from 24 fantasy points per game to 13. We've seen Ferguson go from 16.6 to 10.8. So again, 4 and 5 game sample size. We're working with, small-ish, data sets as it is, but it is just a situation where CeeDee Lamb still very much the wide receiver y'all in Dallas, and everyone else kind of needs to pick up what is left. So hopefully this Raiders defense, obviously not a group we fear. They've allowed the 6th most PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. Could be a boom spot, but would just say maybe you can still get a Godfather offer out there before our trade deadline's coming for George Pickens. I don't necessarily hate that idea as good as he is. So still our wide receiver 14. He is being ranked ahead of guys like T. Higgins and the Eagles wide receivers, Roma Dunze. He is behind Lab McConkey, Nico Collins, and Jalen Waddle. Kendall, we know with the Cowboys, they can put up points, and anyone who plays them can put up points. So who's interesting you over with the Raiders, other than the obvious, guys being Genty and Bowers?
Listen, if you have Genty and Bowers, just, we're jealous of you. It's fine. You can go ahead and start them every single week. But if you want sicko starts, and I know Dwayne does his sicko starts, I don't know if you shouldn't be looking at one Tyler Lockett, Trey Tucker, and it's gross. I understand that. But when you see the stats going up against the Cowboys, this is why we always pick on them, right? They're allowing the 2nd most PPR fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Lockett in the first game last week without Jacoby Myers, he had 25% of the targets. Tucker, 100% of the routes, 13% of the targets as well. So I think that for when I'm looking at Tyler Lockett, these were really good numbers for him because he immediately jumped Trey Tucker. So I think if you really do need a sicko, out of left field kind of flex person, that's the guy that you can go to. And Trey Tucker, for what it's worth, like I do think that there are potential ceiling games, right? 9.9 yards per target this year. He's involved as a runner. So again, not necessarily something that you're excited about, Ian. Go get yourself coffee, go make dinner, whatever you need to do to not watch this game, to play both of those guys, because it is scary. But at some point, you have to take advantage of the matchups. And so I do like Tyler Lockett. If you need a really down deep, down bad sicko start, then I think Trey Tucker is also a guy you can look at too.
It is Monday night, so I'm just hopeful, Kendall, that we see Disney and YouTube TV sell their differences so we can watch it easy. I actually did see a report earlier today. Yeah, per Andrew Machan, YouTube TV and ESPN, deal has, quote, potential momentum to be finalized as sides move closer. I will say, any of you out there frustrated like myself with YouTube TV, they are giving you a $20 credit, but you have to go click literally one button to claim it. Why couldn't they do that automatically? I don't know, but again, go get yourself $20 and click on that if you want. Moving along, guys, Sunday afternoon, we got the Steelers hosting the Bengals. Pittsburgh sitting as 5.5-point home favorites. This game total all the way up there at 49.5, because other than the Cowboys, the Bengals are just our premier red zone cinema team, where we know they're going to be scoring a lot of points and also giving up plenty as well. And I do think that scoring could start to include a lot more Chase Brown than necessarily we've seen throughout this year, because T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, loving life there. But Chase Brown, guys, low-key, played over 90% of the offensive snaps before their bye in Week 9 because Samaje Perine suffered a high ankle sprain. So if you guys remember down the stretch of last season, Chase Brown emerged as a bona fide league winner, top 5 RB after Zach Moss was taken out of the picture. I do think that is something that we could now be seeing again. So Taj Brooks also could be involved, but they've been very reluctant to really give him any touches throughout this year. I think Chase Brown, just seeing what he's been able to do as a pass catcher specifically last season and then last week or 2 weeks ago, gives me a lot of confidence in ranking him as a legit RB1 again. So he is ahead of guys like Derrick Henry, Travion Henderson, Quinshad Judkins in the ranks. Not getting, completely over our skis. Javonte Williams, Ashton Genty, Kyron Williams still ahead of him. But if you got Chase Brown, should be feeling better than ever about his potential to hopefully make up for what's otherwise been a pretty lackluster season. Kendall, going over to the Steelers now, it's a situation where, no, we don't love this offense, but when they're playing the Bengals, we sure do.
Yeah, we're going to pick on them again, just like we do when we are talking about the Dolphins, when we're talking about the Cowboys. Like, I do think there are two good streamer options, and maybe more, depending. We're going to talk about the tight ends here. But if you do need a quarterback, and hopefully you don't, right? This isn't a huge bye week. You're missing the Colts. You're missing the Saints. I don't think a lot of you are starting Tyler Shuck. I hope not. At least Daniel Jones, you might have. So I hope you don't have to go this far. But if you do, I think Aaron Rodgers is definitely a streamer that you can look at, because when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, and they've already played him, it was back in week 7. He scored 24.6 fantasy points, and the Bengals have allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So start at the quarterback level. If you need a streamer, I think he's my top one this week, Ian. Then you go down to Jacoby Brissett and then maybe a Tua Tagovailoa. But you look at the stats against the Bengals and you just try and start as many people as you can. And I think that list this week can also include Pat Freiermuth. So if you need a tight end streamer, which I know some people are a little bit, they're a little bit hurt, right? Because of all the injuries that we've had. You're waiting on a Rondé Gadsden news. You want to make sure to pick someone up just in case. You still like the Bengals because they're bad not only against quarterbacks, but they're bad against tight ends as well. So their defense has allowed the most points per game to opposing tight ends, and then it was 28.1 points in the game that they've faced previously to Freiermuth. So I'm guessing it's going to be him. I've seen people go back and forth on whether it's him or Jonnu Smith in this game, or maybe Darnell Washington. I don't know, Ian. It could be all three. Like, why not get all of them involved and just let them all score? But I'm going to go to the Freiermuth side. I've picked him up in one league where I'm just waiting to hear hopefully good news about a Rondé Gadsden. But yeah, you're just firing everyone up that you can against this team.
If the Steelers tight ends were just one person, stacked on each other's shoulders, they would be the tight end 5 overall on the season, but they're not. So Freiermuth as a tight end 29 is the best they got there. So love those points. And again, guys, Steelers are implied for a team total of 27 points this week. Only the Patriots are actually implied for more. So looking like wheels up for pretty much any Steeler if you are in a position to start them. Moving on, Kendall, we got the Vikings hosting the Chicago Bears. Vikings are favored by 3 points. We got the game total up there at, again, 48.5 points. So want to give some love to Caleb Williams. I know the strength of schedule still hasn't been there, and we've certainly talked about this on the Fantasy Life show as well. But that said, guys, Not like Caleb can control who he's playing. And when he has been playing, he's been doing such a better job this year of avoiding sacks. I mean, that was really the primary culprit last year, holding the ball too long. And yeah, the offensive line didn't help matters, but we had things like pressure to sack rate, which is again what a quarterback is doing under pressure and how often they're taking sacks. He was the second worst quarterback in the league in that last year. His sack rate just itself was the third worst mark. This year, he's got both those in the top 5 all of a sudden. He's broken more tackles than any quarterback, both overall and only on pass plays. I mean, this dude literally has the highest average time to throw in the league, yet he's getting sacked at a bottom 5 rate. And let me tell you what, that's not because the offensive line is incredible. It's because Caleb might as well be Houdini with the football in his hands. So he's got the fastest next-gen stat speed as a ball carrier this season among quarterbacks. Really, really great stuff from Caleb Williams as a pure athlete this entire season. Hopefully, again, we see guys like Roma Dunze and DJ Moore and company, maybe even Luther Burden, who, by the way, leads all Bears pass catchers in passer rating when targeted, getting bigger, better things moving on as well. So good stuff there. Caleb is our consensus QB9 in this spot. That is ahead of guys like Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco, and Jordan Love. Still would start the Matthew Staffords, Dak Prescotts, and Justin Herberts of the world ahead of him, though. Kendall, looking at the Vikings, hey, it's a situation where 9, I know your favorite guy out there, Thor Nystrom's favorite quarterback and person in the world, certainly been a bit up and down, and honestly, that has started to really impact Justin Jefferson. Do you think this would be a get-right spot for him here?
I hope so, Ian, because what are we doing? I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. I can't believe we're at the point in the year where people are actually asking and calling us in on SiriusXM, start sit Justin Jefferson questions. And it's like, listen, I don't think a lot of people are going to have better options than Justin Jefferson. And he still carries, the ceiling because he is just Justin Jefferson. But here's the stat that I finally found. This was from The Athletic. Among the 37 wide receivers with at least 4 games played who are averaging 10 PPR points per game, only Troy Franklin and Brian Thomas Jr. have a lower EPA per target mark than Justin Jefferson this season. So I'm looking at Justin Jefferson, and the marriage right now between him and JJ McCarthy just isn't good. And it's not a hot take. You just need to watch the games and say to yourself, okay, they're not on the same page. Justin Jefferson last week also quitting, not quitting, but just not giving his full effort was weird as well. So I don't know what needs to happen here, but I think fantasy managers can cling on to hope that not only is Justin Jefferson hopefully just going to get back to his ways, but that JJ McCarthy the rest of the season with the schedule that they have is going to be better the rest of the way as well. So I'm thinking that you're okay with, again, I don't think you have better options than starting Justin Jefferson. The stats aren't great, though. He's averaged 12.7 points. He's got a 77 utilization score in 4 games with McCarthy. So only 31% of his historical comps from Dwayne McFarland and the utilization reports have notched a top 12 season. But again, I don't know, Ian. I don't think people have better options. So you just have to keep sending him out there. But you can see in our rankings that he's definitely, on the downward trend because of it.
Consensus wide receiver 9, something that, again, is a far cry from him being usually the overall wide receiver 1 over the past few years. I do tend to believe that he will be able to give us, again, at least low-end wide receiver 1 production moving forward. Hasn't been the case the last few starts with JJ, though, so get it together, guys. Hey, before we move on, though, let's give a quick shout-out to our friends over at Huel. Hey guys, if you don't know Huel, well, you freaking should, because they produce no prep, fast, nutritious, plant-based meals that actually don't even compromise your health. Huel has 2 meal replacement products in particular that have really been helping me avoid skipping meals or feeling bad about eating something quick and crappy during the day. They got ready-to-drink options, including all sorts of tasty flavors. Chocolate peanut butter, which I got right here, is my personal favorite. And I've honestly been pleasantly surprised at not only how good it tastes, but also how full I have stayed for actual hours after drinking it. So these do actually include 35 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, 27 essential vitamins, minerals, no added sugar, also gluten-free. And my favorite part, they're under $5 per meal and ready to go. There's also their daily greens drink, for which, someone like me who despises the entire existence of vegetables really is a game changer to stay healthy, but be quick about it. So right here, I got blueberry, lemon, and thyme, tough word to say. We'll work on it. But yeah, guys, again, a situation where I've tried doing the green powder stuff in the morning because I'm trying to be healthy. This actually tastes good though, so I appreciate that addition. And again, these delicious ingredients include 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods. They are developed by registered nutritionists and dietitians. Only 25 calories, that's good, and also 4 grams of fiber and just 1 single gram of sugar. So yeah, Huel makes healthy eating simple. They also just launched in the Target stores nationwide. Try both products today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code FANTASYLIFE at www.huel.com/fantasylife. Use my code and fill out the post-check survey to help support the show. Again, that's code FANTASYLIFE at www.huel.com/fantasylife. breaking down every week 11 matchup here on the Fantasy Life Show with the great Kendall Valenzuela. And Kendall, next up, we have another NFC West showdown. I love this midseason bracket they got going on. The Cardinals are taking on the 49ers. San Fran sitting as 2.5-point road favorites. Game total up there at 48.5. Sounds like we could get Ricky Pearsall back in action. Again, mentioned at the beginning of the show, Brock Purdy hopefully will be starting as well. But with Ricky Bowles, guys, I mean, first 4 weeks of the year, 81.8 yards per game. That's a ridiculously high mark. It's actually tied with CeeDee Lamb on the season for the sixth best mark. The only guys with better numbers, JSM, Puka, Jamar Chase, Drake London, and George Pickens. So pretty great company. Now that did come with basically no George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings was also dealing with some injuries as he has seemingly every week of his career. But I do think it's a situation where when Pearsall and Jennings are out there, at least this season, Pearsall was working as the more productive option. And if we get Purdy back as well, I do think that would be good news for Ricky Pearsall. So right now we have Juwan Jennings, consensus wide receiver 24. I would move him down to around that wide receiver 30 line with guys like Tez Johnson, Jordan Addison, and Troy Franklin. And honestly, would have Ricky Pearsall right next to him in that wide receiver 3 bucket. So guys, their schedule, which again, we were trying to ride earlier this year with the DST because it was so nice and then half the guys got injured, but it really is nice. Cardinals, Panthers, Browns, Titans, Colts, and Bears throughout the rest of the way. Sounds like, again, as we see this 49ers passing game get even healthier, could see some fireworks from all parties involved. Kendall, speaking of those Cardinals, again, no Maserati Marv, no Zay Jones. So, yeah, 30 targets for Trey McBride. Sign me up.
No, literally, I had everything that I just wrote out before the show. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. Like, we don't get Marvin Harrison Jr., so it's basically Trey McBride to the moon. And I think that's what everyone wants. And if you have Trey McBride, you've just really loved what you've seen with him with Jacoby Brissett in there. I'm of the belief, Ian, that even when Kyler Murray can come off IR, I don't think we see him the rest of the season. And we're heading to an offseason divorce. Don't know where he goes yet, but it'll be really fun to speculate if he can revamp the career. We could see a different kind of Kyler Murray. But to me, Ian, like when you look at Trey McBride, he led all tight ends when we look at week 10 with the 13 targets, tied the season high, which he already reached in week 7 before as well. And he's averaging 17.5 fantasy points per game, which is the highest among tight ends this season. You don't need me to sit here and tell you to start Trey McBride. I do think if you're looking for deep sleepers or maybe just some deeper guys that you say, hey, I need to pick someone up, I'm really in a bad spot this week, it would be Michael Wilson for me and then Dortch, but it would be in that order, Ian, because again, I'm not trying to like tell the future. I wish we could, but we can't. But I think Michael Wilson will get a little bit more work because they just have no one else to go out there. But it will just be Trey McBride just being peppered with targets, it feels like.
Hey, Kendall, have you seen who the Cardinals play in week 17, a.k.a. the fantasy championship?
Who?
The Bengals.
Let's go. Let's go. Come on, Marvin Harrison Jr. You have to be ready by then, right? What's the timeline here?
My God, Trey McBride might break the record for a single game tight end projection in there. If there's a chance, guys, to buy high, and I know it's going to cost a lot, I really would try to do everything in my power to get me some Trey McBride.
Could you imagine though? What if Ian, what if though they just go back to Kyler? They say, screw your fantasy season, and weeks 15 to 18, they just say, here you guys go. Here's Kyler Murray. Would we not throw up? That'd be horrible.
Motivated Kyler, I believe in Trey McBride. I think Kyler can get it done anyway. We'll see what happens closer to then. Another NFC West showdown, this one certainly being of the better team variety. We got the Rams hosting the Seahawks. Game of the week, I would say. Los Angeles sitting there as 3-point home favorites, another 48.5-point game total. So looking at those Seahawks, I just want to ask myself the question, can we confidently start either of these running backs in fantasy land? I think the answer is no. Again, it's an unfortunate situation. If they were one person, Zach Walker or Kenneth Charbonnet, I think that one definitely rolls off the tongue a little bit better. They'd be the RB5 in fantasy. Like they are averaging together over 20 points per game, but guess what? They're not together. They are separate people. And accordingly, Walker is the RB30 and Charbonnet is the RB29 in PPR points per game. So it's been tough, guys. It's been split down the middle. We even got George Halani, AJ Barner vulturing touchdowns near the goal line. And unfortunately, it's keeping both these running backs outside of our top 24, despite loving this run-heavy, high-scoring Seahawks offense. So really is just JSN and everybody else. I do have Charbonnet ranked ahead of Walker if you are in that unfortunate situation where you got to deal with both of them, primarily because of that goal line role. Neither guy's getting fed the ball in the passing game. Their targets together since week 4. Walker has 11, Charbonnet has 8. However, their carries inside the 5. Charbonnet has 9 and Kenneth Walker has 3. So touchdown upside clearly goes to Charbonnet. That is why I prefer him in this spot. Kendall, looking at those Rams, also a backfield split that has been a little bit more pronounced recently. Yeah. What do you make of Kyron Williams battling Blake Corum for a few more touches than usual?
Yeah, I think when we look back at the games that we saw in week 10, right, you saw him him being Blake Corum, handling 67% of the Rams rushing attempt in the second half. But to me, Ian, he's still just the premier handcuff that you want. We're still living in Kyren Williams' world, and it is just going to continue orbiting around him. But we always have to prepare for these injuries, Ian, and that's the one thing I'm looking at here. So when we talk about high-end handcuffs, Blake Corum is firmly right close to the very top. I don't even know if we can call Tyler Algier a handcuff anymore because he's just getting the red zone work and making us all roll our eyes. But I do think he's just of the high-end variety here, and he would be an RB1 if we did see Kyren Williams go down. I think when we look at game script and everything else that was going on last week, it was the blowout win over the 49ers, so that was really what was also contributing. But it's nice to see that they're willing and able to let him close out games too, so that can also make a difference there. But if you have if you have Blake Corum available, and if you also have Kyren Williams, just make sure to handcuff them together just in case.
You mentioned Tyler Algier. I think everyone's kind of caught on to that. And we also have guys like Chuba Hubbard, RJ Harvey, Kyle Monangai, who are rostered in way more fantasy leagues than not. Blake Corum and Brian Robinson. I think those are the two running backs, Kendall, that if you guys have any chance to handcuff, go ahead and get them. Moving on, going across the sea to Madrid. We got Sunday morning football, I believe the last one of the year. Thank God. The Dolphins are facing the Commanders. Miami sitting as 2.5-point favorites, game total resting at 47.5. So tough, guys. I wish there was a commander that I could tell you could confidently start, but I don't think there is. We could have felt better about Bill Krosky-Merritt if Chris Rodriguez was out. He's expected to play. Obviously, Marcus Mariota in a week where we only have 2 buys, we're not exactly lining up to play him. So can we trust a wide receiver? Not really. Terry McLaurin is traveling, but he's not going to play. I guess he's trying to get a vacation in. Respect that. But with Deebo Samuel, guys, the situation where the first 5 weeks of the year were fantastic. Wide receiver 8, averaging 17.7 PPR points per game. 4 games since, though, no doubt influenced by that heel injury, just 8 PPR points per game. The wide receiver 57. So I do think we've seen Deebo, who is averaging a career low yards after the catch, I should say, per reception this year. He just hasn't looked like the same guy, probably again because he's injured. He forced 14 missed tackles in the first 5 weeks of the year, just 1 cent. So it's tough, man. He's my lowest ranked, among the rankers. I have him as wide receiver 35. He's consensus wide receiver 31. We would be starting guys like Tez Johnson, Khalil Shakur, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jameson Williams ahead of him. Kendall, moving on to the Miami Dolphins. I thought this team was on the verge of quitting after week 1. They have impressed me with how well they've stayed together. So kudos to Mike McDaniel and company, and maybe we can keep getting some fantasy points out of them.
I thought they were quitting too because they had a team meeting. Remember that, Ian? They had a team meeting after the first week of the season. And you're like, how bad can it be in Miami when you're having a team meeting after only playing 1 game? But yeah, shout out to Miami because whatever they did last week, I did not see that coming. I know a lot of people got eliminated in their survivor pools. I'm sorry if anyone took the Bills, but there's still not a lot here, right? You're obviously going to play Achane. You're going to play Jalen Waddle. So when I was trying to dig through something to say here, Ian, I will go over to Tua Tagovailoa. Again, I hope that not a lot of people have to go this direction, but if you're looking for a streaming quarterback, he's only 14% rostered. So right now you're looking at the Commanders, who are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points in the league to opposing quarterbacks, and they just feel like they're in a free fall. And so I don't think an international game is going to help them stop the bleeding a little bit, but I'm looking at this and saying, okay, over the last, it's been 4 games, they've allowed 154 points as well. So I think Jalen Waddle, obviously, that's someone you're starting, Achane every single week, but if you really need a deep sleeper or just one of those streamers where you say, I'm desperate and I need fantasy points in my super flex leagues, I think Tua Tagovailoa is the guy that you can go to. And they actually don't have a bad fantasy playoff schedule too. So that's something else to look at. But again, I hope people don't have to go that far.
Greg Dolch is also finally playing a full-time role, and they have one of the best playoff schedules for tight ends specifically. Not sure if it's going to be Dolchich or maybe Darren Waller, someone to also keep in mind if you have an open IR spot. So good stuff there. We got 8 more matchups to break down, guys, so stay tuned. But first, a quick word to our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. Mike's Hard Lemonade is partnering with Matthew Berry and Fantasy Life to give away weekly prizes all season long, including a trip to this year's big game. Prizes actually include Fantasy Life subscriptions on top of gift cards to New Era, Homage, and Knockaround TV, soundbars, and again, 2 tickets to that big game in February. And not only have Fantasy Life and Mike's Hard partner for the sweepstakes, but we've also collaborated on a new 12-pack of exclusive flavors, including Hard Pink Pick 6, Hard Pineapple Rush, my personal favorite, Hard Berry Blitz, and of course, Hard Apple Tackle as well. So go to www.mikeshard.com/sweepstakes/fantasy life today. Enter the sweepstakes and go find the Mike's Hard Fantasy Life 12-pack at a store near you. Note this is for 21 plus only. Premium malt beverage, Mike's Hard Lemonade Company in Chicago, Illinois. Keeping on here on the Fantasy Live Show. We got the Bills hosting the Buccaneers as 5.5-point favorites with a game total at 48. I will say, Kendall, there is a little bit of a weather concern in this one. A cold rain looks fairly likely, and we will need to get closer to game time for details. I always check out Kevin Roth over at Roto Grinders for all my weather-related inquiries, so keep an eye on that. But otherwise, I am personally still feeling okay about Rachaad White if we are going to not have Bucky Irving back. Again, discussed earlier in the show that while he is back at practice, still seems more likely than not that I would guess week 12 is the return date. So one more week for Rachaad White. That said, it has started to trend a little bit more towards a 1A, 1B situation between him and Sean Tucker. First 3 games without Bucky, it really was all Rachaad White. But these last 2, 55%, 73% snap rates for Rachaad White. He's had 15 consecutive touches and then before, having 18 and 20. So just a situation where not quite as much work. He's still the lead back, and I still am comfortable enough to keep him as a low-end RB2, but he's not a must-start person if you guys do happen to have a pretty loaded lineup. So overall consensus RB23 against a Bills defense that's been banged up in the front 7, allow the 6th most PPR points for game 2 opposing running backs. That said, we would be starting guys like RJ Harvey, Aaron Jones, Kamadi Vidal, Travis Etienne ahead of him, among others. Kendall, looking at the Bills, we love Josh Allen, we love James Cook, but it's kind of wild that we have Josh Allen averaging a career high 8.1 yards per attempt and can't feel good about any pass catcher.
No, it's gross, Ian. How are we living in the world where we have Josh Allen QB1 season and then I can't say anything nice about Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman? So I wrote this one up for today, and this is just a rant. The Bills have a wide receiver problem, and that's not even a hot take. Like, they've told us before, and they told us a week or 2 now ago, that they were trying to get Jalen Waddle. And so you say, okay, you were trying to get Jalen Waddle. It didn't work out. And you look at this team as a whole, Keon Coleman's not stepping forward. And I think they put a lot of eggs in that basket to say, well, Keon Coleman's going to be our guy. He's going to be our field stretcher. He's going to be good to go. And he hasn't done it. So I'm picking on Keon Coleman in this one just from the game last week, which again, it wasn't good. But up until the third quarter, when the Bills had no score in that game, their wide receiver room on completions had an average depth of target of 5.14 yards. And that's been the case the whole season. So again, you still got some production out of Keon Coleman. I think he finished that game with like 13 fantasy points. But to me, Ian, it's wild that teams know that if they can shut down the run with the Bills and shut down James Cook, which is what they did, they will wilt under the pressure because they don't have this alpha target that's able to step up. And so I still think if you have Khalil Shakir, you're starting him. Keon Coleman is the biggest boom or bust kind of guy that you can look around. And I think you're going to have better options. But in 2025, again, where we have Josh Allen, who is a superstar, we can only really say that we're comfortable starting basically 2 guys from this team, and that's James Cook and Josh Allen. I think that's insane to me.
Should be getting Josh Palmer back, but I'm not going to be exactly skyrocketing him up the ranks either, feeling great about it. So it is funny, Kendall. We're watching Drake May put up all these great numbers. The Patriots are doing their thing atop the AFC East. 2 of their most productive wide receivers, Stephon Diggs and Mac Hollins. Makes you think, Kendall. Let's move on. Sunday Night Football. We got the Eagles hosting the Lions. Philly sitting as 2.5-point home favorites. Game total of 46.5 points. So looking at the Lions, I just want to kind of peer into the Jared Goff infamous home and away, indoor-outdoor splits, if you will. And guys, since 2022, he's played 20 games outdoors. He's actually had a 68% completion rate. He's a 69% indoors. Still averaged 7.4 yards per attempt. His touchdown to interception ratio is actually higher outdoors than it is indoors. 249 yards per game versus 273 when he is indoors. But all in all, guys, I do tend to think it's more noise than anything. Like, okay, yeah, if we are playing in Chicago, in December and it's 10 degrees with 30-mile-per-hour winds, we're going to downgrade Jared Goff. We're going to downgrade any quarterback playing in that. I think it's a situation where, again, Goff has been so freaking good indoors, and maybe with a smaller sample outdoors, it's been made into a bigger problem than it really is. Look no further than last week when he literally just shredded the Commanders for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. So not an easy matchup. Philly has still not allowed a 300-plus yard passer. Tampa Bay and Minnesota actually the only teams to clear 230, but it is the Lions with Dan Campbell, and that was the one change we really saw last week, Kendall. Weeks 1 through 10, this was tied for the second most run-heavy offense in the entire NFL. But with Dan Campbell calling plays, they actually had the highest DBOE of any team other than, I think, the Chiefs in that week of action. So good stuff. Hopefully we see Jameson Williams continue to ride those extra targets to fantasy success. Goff, though, is our consensus QB 15 on the week. Kendall, looking at the Eagles, again, Devontae Smith, someone who's been outperforming A.J. Brown, and accordingly, our rankers are finally taking, maybe a little bit page out of my playbook from last week, ranking
Mm-hmm.
Devontae over AJ Brown. Maybe Kendall has a chance both guys get going in this matchup.
No, you're a trendsetter, Ian. We already knew that, but now everyone's following suit and saying, I think he's our consensus wide receiver 18 on the week. Like, that's how far AJ Brown has fallen this season. And listen, it's always going to be a back and forth. I have him on one team, Ian, and I always every week go back and forth because I say, okay, AJ Brown. So this game the past week on Monday night was the third time he's given us less than 4 PPR fantasy points. But then he also has the chance to erupt. And we've seen it before. It hasn't been that much this season. It's been 2 games of 20 plus fantasy points. But that's what he can give us. And so I think that's why it's so difficult to figure out what to do with AJ Brown if you have him, especially based on where you drafted him in his ADP. So to me, I do think this is a better spot, right? And you hope that it's a squeaky wheel game because he told us, don't play him in fantasy, drop him, whatever he said, Ian. He's just trying to pick him up for himself. That's what he's trying to do to his league mates. I'm just looking at the totals though. Like the game has an over under right now where last time I looked 46.5, right? Which is, a little bit lower than what we usually see for a Lions game. But I think this is going to be a shootout, and I think that they're going to be scoring points back and forth. This is a tougher matchup for Saquon Barkley on the ground as well. So I do think they're going to have to get it a little bit more done through the air. So that means it'll be, of course, at the end of the day, we'll watch this back and it'll be Devontae Smith and like Dallas Goedert. But I really do hope that AJ Brown just gets the squeaky wheel game. If you have 17 other wide receivers that are better than him, you're starting him. But yeah, wide receiver 18 is where we've got him right now.
It is a good matchup when you look at some of the more man coverage heavy teams out there, which does feature the Lions. Their secondary has been banged up throughout this season. AJB and Devonta Smith have some pretty Ned Stark, just splits in terms of what they do, man versus zone coverage. So keep an eye out for that. I do want to stay on that topic, though, as we get to the Broncos hosting the Chiefs. Kansas City sitting as 4-point road favorites, game total of 44.5. I was wondering, could this be a game that maybe benefits Xavier Worthy? Because, again, Broncos still trying to deal without Patrick Surtain, but they are still running a ton of man coverage. Obviously, it could be a situation where Patrick Mahomes, even in a tough matchup, still manages to get his. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure it's going to be the usual suspects here. Rashee Rice, guys, actually has very big splits against man versus zone, just a 14% targets per route run rate against man, 35% against zone, which makes sense when you watch the Chiefs. I mean, God, if you give Rice even a small sliver of space to sit down against zone coverage, Mahomes will get him the ball quick, but we haven't seen him featured against man. Haven't seen Xavier Worthy either. Really, guys, it's been Marquise Brown and Tyquan Thornton with the biggest splits, man versus zone. So Thornton's been phased out a little bit ever since they got Rashee Rice back in the lineup. Honestly, this made me actually put Hollywood Brown more so up into that wide receiver 4 conversation, quietly having a nice little bounce back season for himself now that he's finally stayed healthy. So again, I hope you guys have better options, but if you're in the 3 flex 14-team league, Hollywood Brown, could be, not the worst option to maybe fire up in this spot. Kind of looking at those Broncos, Troy Franklin leads the team in targets. Courtland Sutton does not. What's going on here?
Ian, I don't know. What are we doing? Courtland Sutton, I feel bad for Courtland Sutton managers. I think now he's in a range where we say he's not in must-start territory. And I think people have realized that by now. He's our consensus wide receiver 24 on the week. So he's right. He's right in the range. But, I mean, you have to be really disappointed with the splits that you've seen. So Troy Franklin recently has emerged, and he's really cutting into Sutton's workload. So you see Troy Franklin has a 30.6% target share, and that is compared to Courtland Sutton at 19.7%. And then that's over the past 4 weeks. You look even further, and he's just really total targets. It's gone over to Franklin now, 73 to 66 on the year. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the matchup too. It is not an easy matchup for the Denver Broncos. This is going to be such a fun game to see, but only 3 wide receivers have scored as many as 15 points against the Chiefs in 2025. And so you have to downgrade him for that alone. And then Bo Nix to me is just someone that's been so disappointing as well. So you just add on all the layers and you're taking on a tough Chiefs team. The Chiefs are coming off their bye. But Bo Nix has completed only 60.9% of his passes. And that's despite us talking about how good his protection has been. His protection has been good this season. So to me, he leads the league in off-target passing in week 10. That was last week. And then his season-long off-target rate is at 13.7, which is higher than only Davis Mills, Cam Ward, Michael Penix Jr., and J.J. McCarthy. It's not good company. That's not good. So to me, you have to downgrade Courtland Sutton. I wish I had better things to say about him. I think Troy Franklin has emerged as someone that is in flex territory because of all that we've seen right now. I've been starting him in guillotine leagues, only been chopped in 2 so far, Ian. So I'm going to keep riding that wave. But yeah, Courtland Sutton managers are just so disappointed.
RJ Harvey at this point, really the only must-start option for the
Yeah.
Broncos this week. Surprising given that, yeah, they're 8-2. It's tend to forget that sometimes when you watch this offense. Moving right along, though, Kendall, we got the Jaguars hosting the Chargers. Chargers are sitting as 3-point road faves. Game total resting at 43.5 here. So honestly, with the Chargers, you're starting Justin Herbert. You're starting Ladd McConkey, who's just been on a freaking tear ever since doing absolutely nothing in September. We also love Kamani Vidal, who played 94% of the snaps last week. Guys, you cannot bench any running back that is going that crazy. I mean, I guess you can. We have them ranked as like the RB19, RB20, but you're feeling good if you have them, and I'm guessing most people need to start them. Around the gas and getting to go up against the same defense that Brock Bowers took a freaking flamethrower to 2 short weeks ago. Again, he is practicing and feel good. So that leaves us with Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. And guys, I do think QJ is the one we can feel a little bit better about in this spot. So yes, he has, morphed into a bit more of a boomer bust wide receiver 3 in recent weeks. Not looking like that wide receiver 1 world beater we saw in September, but Keenan Allen's just not even been on the field to take advantage of the opportunities. Meanwhile, QJ still has the full-time role. So last 3 weeks for Keenan, he's only had route rates of 50%, 54%, and 60%. He was at 75% in the first 7 weeks of the season. So again, if Gadsden is going to be back in the picture, it's going to squeeze targets for QJ and Keenan alike. But I do think in a matchup against the Jaguars, 8th worst defense and fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, this could be one of those spots where we can be a little bit more excited about QJ than normal. Kendall, looking at those Jaguars, hey, Travis Hunter's out. Brian Thomas Jr. likely out. Parker Washington, maybe in our hearts as a legit wide receiver we can feel good about, huh?
Right? Who would have thought we would be saying that going into week 11? But I agree with you 100%. Like Parker Washington's outlook the rest of the season, I mean, it's obviously on the rise. It's unfortunate with Travis Hunter being banged up, but we were expecting, like they told us he was going to come back. And that was off after the week 7 kind of breakout game that he had, where we were wondering, okay, is that going to continue the rest of the season? So no Travis Hunter this week. Like you said, Brian Thomas Jr. is battling that ankle injury and a lot of other stuff too, Ian. Like he just hasn't been good this season. So now Parker Washington is in this spot where I think he could potentially be a wide receiver 1 for this team again. I'm curious what it's going to look like with Jacoby Myers once he gets fully up to speed in this offense, because I should have looked into that more, that Jacoby Myers going to that team during the trade deadline probably indicated that Travis Hunter's injury was a little bit worse than expected. But I mean, over the last 2 games, 76 utilization score, 14.5 points per game, and he has a 25% target share. So you're taking that every day of the week. If you have him, he's definitely in the flex conversation, and especially if Brian Thomas Jr. is out, you're going to be starting him. And I don't know, Ian, I'm ready to say, like, even when Brian Thomas Jr. is in and back and ready, like, what has he shown us this season? Why? I know that he's going to get his targets, but it hasn't been good. So I still feel like we'll have to think of Parker Washington as someone that's right borderline on the flex when BTJ does come back.
No, Parker has really made the most out of his opportunities, as has Travis Etienne, who you want in your lineups. I will say, though, guys, I know there's a lot of disappointed Bayshall Tootin' truthers out there. If you see that dude hit the waiver wire, no, I don't think he's taking Etienne's job at this point. I don't think that at all. Still a great handcuff, though. Don't forget about that. Moving right along, though, we got the Giants hosting the Packers. Packers are sitting at 7-point faves. The game total is at 43.5 points. And just looking at this Packers team, ever banged up wide receiver room. We got Romeo Dobbs with a chest injury, but it sounds like he's going to be okay. And guys, the Giants are another one of these defenses who use a lot of man coverage, and they're actually quite bad at defense as a whole. So it's a nice little combo for us to potentially take advantage of with 2 wide receivers specifically. Romeo Dobbs, who ends up leading the way in total targets and also versus man-heavy defenses, and also maybe, just maybe, some Dontavian Wicks. So if Matthew Golden's back in the picture with the shoulder injury, that's going to make it tough to get too excited about Wicks, given that Watson and Dobbs are going to be starting. But if not, guys, we're talking about Dontavian Wicks having a 35% targets per route rate run against man, 12% against zone. Like, he is their shifty route runner who can get open one-on-one. Hopefully he can just remember to hold on to the football. So Dobbs, top 25 option. But again, in that similar mold as Hollywood Brown, I do think Dontavian Wicks, for more desperate fantasy managers, can give you someone in this spot. Kendall, looking at those Giants, Jameis is under center. Just rank every wide receiver and tight end up in the top 5. It's that easy, right?
Literally, yeah. You just want YOLO Jameis back, and that's what we get. Like, the Giants are going to win things, but at least they're giving us fantasy points, and that's all we care about. So, yeah, I mean, look, the outlook for Jameis Winston now with the wide receivers and tight ends is a lot better than it was going to be with Russell Wilson. Even if they let Russ cook, no one wanted that over for New York, and so they're not going to get it. Jameis led the NFL with 40.57 pass attempts per game last season among quarterbacks with 5+ starts. So the one guy, because we've talked about Wan'Dale Robinson, if you have him, you're starting him. Hopefully Darius Slayton's good to go this week as well. Popped up on the injury report with the hamstring. But the one guy I wanted to talk about was Theo Johnson, because I think Theo Johnson, I saw he was 40% rostered when I wrote him up this week for the waiver wire. But when I'm looking at him, his season-long average depth of target right now is sitting at 6.86. So that's above the league average, which you like to see. You add Jameis Winston into the mix here. And I think that when I'm looking at his fantasy points scored, he's given us like 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 games. So I like the ADOT. I like the use that they're getting out of him because they've lost a lot of guys this season. So I think Theo Johnson's another guy where if you've held on to him, I do like him in this one this weekend as well.
And then there are 3 more matchups to break down here on the Fantasy Live show. We got the Falcons hosting the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta 3.5-point favorites. Game total at a lowly 42.5. These are the sort of matchups we're at to this point. And Kendall, I just wanted to ask, is Bryce Young maybe the worst quarterback of the 21st century? You can make an argument. He's dead last in yards per attempt at 5.8 among 119 qualified quarterbacks. There's literally only 3 under 6 since 2000, guys. Bryce Young, Joey Harrington, Kyle Bowler. Not good company at all. And it sucks because, again, Bryce really, truly played good football during the second half of last season. But my God, guys, we're in the second year at Dave Canales. You got Tedero McMillan. Even Jalen Coker's back in the lineup, still getting a lot of nothing more weeks than not. So, unfortunately, because of this, it really is tough to get behind Tedero McMillan, especially against a Falcons pass defense that has managed to eat alive some much better passing offenses. Pretty inconsistent as a whole, but man, T-Mac, someone who's coming in more so as a wide receiver 3 these days. The only one we can feel good about is Rico Dowdle. But even then, guys, he's not practicing on Wednesday with the quad, which happened last week. I don't think it's going to keep him out or anything, but he's a little bit banged up. And just last week, averaging 2.9 yards per carry. I'm just wondering how long the leash is for Rico Dowdle completely keeping Chuba on the bench. Because, when he was averaging 7 yards a week and going for 200, how could you bench the guy if you're the Carolina Panthers? But I just worry if we see another game or two where Rico doesn't go crazy, maybe they do start looking back at that 50-50 split. So just saying, guys, depends on the roster, but you still could sell Rico Dowdle pretty high at the moment. I don't hate the thought of doing that for now because, again, the Bryce Young-led offense, no scoring upside, and that offensive line remains awfully banged up as well. Over with those Falcons, Kendall, we got Bijan Robinson, we got Drake London, but as Raheem Morris stated today, the superstar for the Falcons that not enough people are talking about, Tyler Algier.
Can we believe it? Tyler Algier is the one ruining your fantasy teams. Just kidding. Bijan Robinson's still doing well, but I think it's the goal line back in the role that we see for Tyler Algier right now that's not good, or that gets people a little bit frustrated. Carries from inside the 10 this season so far. Tyler Algier has 13, but Bijan Robinson has 5. So when you look at the splits and the role that he has, Algier is one of Ian. I don't even know if we can call him a handcuff anymore because I do think that you can just go ahead and play him because if he's going to have that role the rest of the season, what's stopping you from putting him in the flex? Because they're just obviously going to allow that to continue happening. He obviously gets a lot more work if Bijan Robinson were to go down, and we never want that to happen. But I think in these deeper formats, in these deeper leagues that you have that I know a lot of people watching are in, you're going to continue going with it because he's accounted for 75% of the team's attempts inside the 10. He's scored 4 touchdowns. Like, you're just looking at this and saying to yourself, I'm just going to ride this wave until they tell us it's not going to happen anymore. So I know Bijan Robinson managers are shaking their head. Gene Clemens had a whole breakdown of it on the LG show the other day, and he was just pissed about it. But we just have to take it for what it is. Bijan Robinson is still getting you fantasy points. Yes, it could be more, but Tyler Algier right now, not only so also if you want to, still a premier handcuff. Like for whatever reason, if he's out there, you go and grab him. But in those deeper formats, I'm going to continue playing him.
It is the Falcons, okay? We thought there was a smash spot earlier in the year, and he had 2 touches for 4 yards when the Panthers won this game 30-0. So, again, nothing's guaranteed, but I'm with you. He's certainly starting to creep into that, David Montgomery sort of territory as a mid-tier RB3, even when Bijan is healthy enough to go ahead and do Bijan things. Let's talk about the Browns hosting the Ravens, who are 8-point road favorites here with a lowly game total of just 39.5. And looking at those Ravens, maybe the 5th straight week, I've been praying for a Zay Flowers boom week, but I really think it can happen this time, guys. Again, he caught a touchdown on his 6th target of the season, but it has been 60 long, cold, scoreless targets ever since. This is a matchup he's done pretty well against in recent history. 7 catches for 115 yards, another 7 catches for 75 yards in his last 2 meetings against the Browns. And I would just say, as much as, I've been hopeful that there was going to be a bigger Zay Flowers boom, and I've been telling you guys to buy low on the guy, hoping for that. So for that, again, be patient, and I apologize, but he hasn't been killing us like past years. It's not not this boom or bust situation. He's just kind of been Wan'Dale Robinson-esque, and we know he's better than him. We know he's a better offense and everything. But Zay Flowers this year, guys, only one game as worse than the wide receiver 32 because he's caught at least 4 passes in all but one game this season. So again, ultra talented player, Lamar Jackson, even with that knee injury, is expected to play. I do think bigger days will be ahead here for Zay Flowers, particularly with Rashad Bateman potentially being on the wrong side of questionable now that he is dealing with an ankle injury. So our consensus, wide receiver 19, that is Zay Flowers. He is ahead of guys like DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, still behind the Eagles wide receivers and Roma Dunze, so don't get too crazy. But yes, sooner rather than later, Zay Flowers going to boom. I truly mean it. Kendall, looking at those Cleveland Browns, Dylan Gabriel, I could probably also make a good argument, is the worst quarterback in football alongside Mr. Bryce Young, but we still got a pretty good running back up there in Cleveland.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to talk about Jerry Jeudy here. I just can't do it. So we're going to go back to Quinshon Judkins because we get to pick what we talk about here. And so I think Quinshon Judkins can get back to his ways that we've seen so far this season. You look at the Ravens, they have a 2.6 fantasy boost to opposing running backs, which is nice. But then Dwayne McFarland kind of broke down the overall schedule the rest of the way. And it really does look like Quinshon Judkins can outperform what he's already done so far this season. So that's nice for his managers to hear. Again, when you look at him, he has an 81% rush share since taking over this full-time role. That was week 3 for the Browns. So you look at that over that span, 18.6 attempts and 2 targets. Like, it just looks really good for him. And so the rest of the way, you have the Bears in week 15, you have the Bills week 16, and then the Steelers in week 17 for the fantasy football playoffs. But I think there's still a lot of meat left on the bone with Quinshon Judkins. I think if people have him, you don't need us to tell you to start him. But it feels like better days are ahead for him going forward.
Again, hasn't been crushing it the last 4 weeks, but even while averaging some of the worst efficiency among running backs, he's still been the RB24 the last 4 weeks. Not a bad floor to have on the squad. Last game in week 11, everyone, we got the Titans hosting the likely Davis Mills-led Texans. Houston sitting at 7-point favorites. Game total, again, a week low, 38.5 points. So looking at those Texans, again, not going to be happy about playing Davis Mills. Nico Collins is still going to be a wide receiver 1. But the other guy that I do think we actually can start to get more excited about and having in fantasy lineups is Woody Marks. So yes, last week, obviously we had the crazy 26-0 fourth quarter comeback that Davis Mills and company were able to get up on and take down the Jaguars. So I know there's a ton of negative game script. It was like 10-0 Jaguars early in that game. So there is the potential for some of Woody Marks' usage to have been because of that. At the same time, though, guys, I think the really big point that a lot of people are missing, we saw Woody Marks have the 80% snap rate, but one of the most important snaps is the first one of the game. And Woody Marks started for the first time all season. To me, that's big because Nick Chubb was starting every other game. So at some point, they had to have a legit conversation and say, Nick, sit down. We are going to start the game now with Woody Marks. Wound up getting his 16 touches, second most in the season. Again, I do think that Woody Marks is actually trending up this time. I know he got hyped up in week 4, but maybe that was a situation where it was more of the fluky negative game script. So not going too crazy here. It is still a Texans offense. It's not like Woody Marks has just been a complete world beater with his opportunities. Still a consensus RB24. We would be starting him ahead of guys like Dave Montgomery, the Seahawks running backs, Tyron Tracy, Bill Krosky-Merritt, among others. Kendall, looking at the Titans, you got anything here? Calvin Ridley's back.
No, we can move on. No, thanks, everyone. We'll give you like 5 minutes of your life back. What are we doing? Like, no, Tajay Spears. I can say something about Tajay Spears. If he's on waivers, he's worth picking up. I think we can say that at least. I mean, it's a 50-50 timeshare with Tony Pollard over the last 4 games. Then you look at him, he's averaged 10.6 points, 59 utilization score over those 4 games as well. Historical comps aren't good. Like, I think it's 82% of them with 11.1 points are reaching top 36 territory. So it's nothing good. There's not a lot of good to say about the Tennessee Titans right now. Hopefully in 2026, we can say better things. But I do think Tajay Spears, he's a worthwhile add if he is out there on waivers.
And with that, guys, 15 up, 15 down. And that's going to do it for us here on the Fantasy Life Show. As always, if you like the show, then please like the show. Always helps when you hit that little subscribe button as well. So for Kendall, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.